Well, I'm super, super excited to chat with you today, Dr. Anna. So, I want to start off with just having you share a little bit of your story and what drove you to discover, your keto green and helping women, just with their hormones and everything. I know you've been through a lot personally, in your life. And so I always like to start there with everyone.
Yeah, thank you. So I think one of the, biggest part of my story was, there are many aspects, certainly, but I think I was such a big pioneer in women's health because at an early age, I realized that you know, the practices that were being prescribed to women were based on research done on men. So, I became a really strong women's health advocate. And then through becoming an OBGYN and at in private practice in Southeast Georgia as a National Health Service Corps. I mean, I was in solo practice delivering babies, doing medicine, surgeries, all that stuff, and seeing, so many patients every day. And I was then, through a traumatic incident in our family, thrown into early menopause at age 39, where, you know, my husband at the time and I wanted to so desperately to have another baby. And I was diagnosed with permanent irreversible infertility and early menopause and had failed the highest doses of injectable fertility meds. And that was devastation upon devastation, Erica. And that really um, just blew, and when you give a diagnosis like that in medicine, I mean, there's not like, oh, well, let's do these things to reverse it. Not at that time. That was 2006. And so, we didn't talk about reversing it. It wasn't like in even my conscience. And that took me in a brokenhearted sabbatical from my medical practice and a year around the world in a journey that led me serendipitously to meet healers from all over the world. And I learned so much: the food as medicine, our spiritual practices, our mindset, our what we focus on, how critically important that is, and how everyday trauma or everyday stress or post-traumatic stress can affect our physiology. And I learned how to reverse it. I say the hand of God was in my life every step of the way. And as a result of this journey, reversed that early menopause and delivered a healthy baby girl at age 41. So now I'm 55 with a 13-year-old. Anyone out there can relate?
Oh gosh. Well, I love that your story has a good ending in that
Thank you.
aspect. That you were able to get pregnant. And, personally myself, I was 34, went through mold and was nearing menopausal levels with hormones too. And it's amazing. And this is why I love everything that you're doing, because also just sharing with women, like, look, like, no matter where you're at, what's going on, like there's hope. Like there's always hope. We just have to keep looking and look outside the box for things. And I love the work that you're doing to help women with their hormones. And I love your approach. So can
Thank you.
we first,
Thank
let's
you.
talk about hormones a little bit in a little bit different way. Like we don't need to talk about estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. I love your approach to hormones, specifically how you address insulin, cortisol, and oxytocin, which we do not talk about all of those near enough.
And they're the most important hormones of our body. They are. And I always say, I studied years of my life, prime years of my life. I trained at one of the best institutions in the world for obstetrics and gynecology and at Emory University in Atlanta. And let me tell you, the reproductive hormones are not our major hormones as much as we would like to believe so, especially as an obstetrician and gynecologist. Everywhere you look, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, right? And even DHEA, but the most powerful hormones in our body, absolutely, the governing body of hormones, let's call them that, and cortisol, and the crowning hormone, the hormone that makes life worth living, right? That brings a smile to our face, is oxytocin, the hormone of love, bonding, and connection. And one thing I write about in my book, The Hormone Fix, is that it takes more than hormones to fix your hormones. And it's so true. I wish I learned that at the start of med school.
Yes, I love your approach. So can we talk about how insulin, cortisol, oxytocin, can you talk a little bit about how they all kind of work together and how they can affect your hormones? Because you're so right? We get so fixated on, oh gosh, my hormones aren't at the right level. And, when I run Dutch tests for clients, I'm like, okay, well, this is just a piece of information that tells me something's going on, but we've got to do the deeper work to actually start to turn that around.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so part of my discovery was through, my own journey, and then early menopause, certainly, and then going through early menopause, like a second menopause at age 48. So I think at 55, I'm finally post-menopause, finally this year, 12 months without a period for good, right? Like it hasn't come back in a year and a little bit now. So a year and a half now, a year, just over a year now. And so I can say I'm finally menopausal and in my second spring of my life, in the second spring of my life. So I'm excited about that. So insulin is really important, like and how it's tied to our physiology. That was also things that I discovered in my journey in creating what I call the Keto-Green plan. So that which creates the lifestyle to manage these hormones, right? The lifestyle to manage these hormones, that's 100% in our power. It's 100% in our power. And when we make these changes, it's dynamic. So insulin and cortisol naturally increase as we get older. And we become more insulin resistant with age, and certainly with lifestyle habits and the food we eat, of course, the nutrition that we're eating affects insulin. So you hear a lot about insulin resistance and diabetes because our cells become more insulin resistant. And that happens. That's why women, as you hit menopause and beyond, you have increased insulin resistance. Plus, with the change in the fluctuations of our hormones, that in and of itself will create some insulin resistance. So there's a combination here. There's this collaboration in our hormones. And insulin, the more insulin sensitive we become as we age, the healthier we are, the lower risk of all diseases, all inflammatory diseases, metabolic syndrome, heart disease, cancer, dementia. I mean, the more insulin sensitive we become, that's crucial. And Erica, I know you teach this, that hemoglobin A1c that we do on those blood tests is one of the most important markers. And it's something we need to get below 5.3, close to 5.0. And we can do that at any age with any diagnosis. We can really improve that hemoglobin A1c. And I've seen it in people who have been type 1 diabetic for 30 years, as well as people who have been type 2 diabetic. And we call type 3 diabetic Alzheimer's. And we don't want to go there, but it's a sequential process if we don't address insulin. And it does. It affects our progesterone, and that concept of becoming more insulin resistant a little bit the second half of our menstrual cycle. For people who experience PMS and cravings, really strong cravings, that second half of our menstrual cycle, because our bodies actually has more, is more insulin resistant, creating more glucose to feed that baby that it's expecting. It's at midway through that cycle. So, but when you don't have that baby, you really don't need that insulin resistance there. So just knowing that and how to use your diet, your nutrition patterns to really complement your body's natural cycle, it's powerful. So that's one that's so crucial. When we just even address insulin, that is dynamic in the health that we can achieve.
No, I think this is so important because we tend to just fixate on our main, hormones. And then when we start questioning, oh gosh, they're not on the right levels, then it's like, okay, well, do we do the, hormone, replacement, or what can we do? And, at the end of the day, right, so much of it comes down to our nutrition. So that's always the first place to look, which is why I love your Keto-Green smoothie. I'm going to highly recommend it to everybody. I also wanted to thank you that you didn't put any sweetener stuff in it, because that, like, I've discovered for myself that stevia will actually raise my blood sugar more than even honey and stuff like that. It's very interesting, very rare. I always have the outlier things.
Wow, that is fascinating.
So
So it has a little of low-hanging fruit in there. So that's the only sweetener that's in there, that natural sweetness from low-hanging fruit. That's the only thing.
but it's not got the stevia and the monk
No, it
fruit and
doesn't.
all that kind of stuff. So that I really appreciate that. I wanted to thank you for that, because you don't taste the other, and it doesn't seem to affect me, which is great.
Well, and
So
the key thing is that you're looking at your blood sugar. You're looking at the blood sugar. So
yeah. So, okay, let's talk about a little bit about cortisol and oxytocin. And I know your oxytocin's like your top one that you talk about. So let's definitely make sure we get to talk about that a little bit.
yes, yeah. And oxytocin is the most powerful hormone in our body, and it opposes the stress hormone cortisol. Really seen that work and play out in women's lives, my own life. And that's why I had to understand the science behind it. Because when I had my trauma and our stress, that's very cortisol driven. When there's someone with PTSD, you're very cortisol driven. It's on a constant plane. Your heart rate variability decreases. You're in this higher stress and higher stress state, and energetically you're so depleted in so many ways, unless it's frantic, a frantic compensatory energy, which sometimes you see. And so this, state of chronic, the cortisol creates this drop in oxytocin. So cortisol goes up, oxytocin goes down. And this oxytocin is the hormone of love, bonding, and connection. So and cortisol is that potent steroid anti-inflammatory hormone. And so when it's up for a long time, the paraventricular nucleus of the brain will shut it down, because it's like, hey, cortisol, you are frying me out. Cortisol is acidic. It's catabolic. It breaks you down, breaks down muscle, breaks down bone, breaks down collagen, creates wrinkles and gray hair. You can see beginning and end of any presidency term, what happens to our president and first lady, right? It's incredibly aging. And so it's that catabolic hormone and acidifying. And so when you're in this dangerous state, when cortisol's low and oxytocin's low at the same time, that's burnout. That's the physiology of divorce. That's the physiology of thinking, gosh, I know I love my wife or my husband. I just don't feel love for them. I used to love going into the office. Now I can't even bring myself to go there. I used to, be social and go to events. And now I don't do any of that. Like, we're seeing this at a pandemic level right now. And there's physiology behind that. So as I lived that out, quite predominantly when in my 40s, and recognize, okay, I've got to turn this around, because also you can't lose weight. You're more anxious. You have this monster within you that rears her ugly head. And, and with PMS, with that change in physiology, you have that worse in the week before your menstrual cycle. And there's a physiological reason to that we can correct 100% of the time, 100% of the time. And so when that's happening, you have to really look at, okay, what are the things that I need to do? And one of the reasons that's happening in PMS and worsens in menopause is because progesterone is cortisol is created from progesterone. So we need progesterone to create cortisol. So you add in stress, it's going to deplete your progesterone. The second half of your menstrual cycle will be more progesterone deficient or estrogen dominant. You'll have all those PMS symptoms and even depressive symptoms. And your period will be irregular, shorter, longer, breakthrough bleeding, more painful, all of those things that can happen with menses and with your menstrual cycle. And so that's a function of this higher stress, this higher um, stress state. And where oxytocin comes in, it's like I say, the crowning hormone. This beams of light. And for so many of us, the first encounter that we really even hear about oxytocin is when we're in labor and delivery. And your obstetrician, like, I would come in and say, okay, well, the labor is proceeding a little slow. There are signs that we need to speed this up. And so I'm going to give you some Pitocin, and that is IV oxytocin. And I'll give you some oxytocin in labor, and let me, let's speed things up a little bit. There was a time of really aggressive and high dose Pitocin, but I think the consequences of that, because oxytocin is an important receptor of connection. And there may be some research that's indicating a link between that, along with like failed high dose Pitocin and cesarean section, worsening the increased risk of autism and autistic behavior, which is an oxytocin deficient manifestation. And so it's very interesting as I've looked into this research and trying to make the connections between the physiology and behavior and how important this is. So the beautiful thing is, when we start creating activities that increase oxytocin, this hormone of love, bonding, and connection, and again, it's a appetite suppressing hormone. Like, you're in love, you're not hungry. It's a pain relieving hormone. You deliver this 10-pound baby and you're like, oh, let's do it again. You're amnestic, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are we thinking? You don't even remember till you're in labor again. And then you forget thereafter. Like, that was painful. So, and I delivered my youngest naturally. So I'm like,
Wow.
what was I thinking? So, and so it has and it's an anti-aging hormone, helps with muscle cell regeneration. And what I found out through my whole Keto-Green approach and the Keto-Green way of doing things is, and checking urine pH and ketone. So my Keto Ph testing, and just urinary testing, everyone should do it. It tells you so much about your body. You won't like me initially, but you will love the information it gives your body. And you'll be like, oh my God, look at what my pee strip says. And ketosis and alkaline at the same time. Like, life is good. I feel so amazing. And that's where I want everyone to be. I'm in that Keto-Green state this morning to be on this call with you, so that I have, good memory. I'm clear, I can show up at my highest level of energy for you, versus, if I drank 2 glasses of wine last night and had, something starchy for breakfast, or something that I don't do, but I don't even know what that would be. If I added fruit in my Keto-Green smoothie, then if I added fruit in, then that would give me a higher blood sugar and then drop me down. So I'd be hungry and foggy. So we don't want that. Okay. So all that to say that doing things that increase oxytocin, I do it with my patients going through perimenopause, and I do it with clients with autism and many other disorders, right? So oxytocin is the most alkalinizing hormone in your body. So you can be doing everything right with your diet, but you're stressed, you're in a toxic relationship, you're in mold toxicity like you were, Erica, and your urine pH will be acidic. Your oxytocin levels will be low. So adding in oxytocin increasing behavior, certainly intimacy, love, love making, kissing, massage, hugging, those are oxytocin boost. And having a pet, and this is why pets are so good for the elderly and autism, and why we're seeing more, animal support dog, right? Support animals, emotional support animals are becoming really popular. There's a physiology to why we need that. That's that oxytocin. That's that companion, that, that loving feeling you get when you walk into your room and your dog's like tail wagging and so happy to see you. Like, oh my gosh, I wish teenagers would react that way, right? And so, it's like that feeling you get, laughter, going out and maybe not being so great on your diet, but having the best time, having so much fun and laughing and, enjoying yourself with people that you love and care about, that love you unconditionally. And there's that, oh my gosh, that's boosting your oxytocin, and your urine pH will be alkaline. Have that same meal and be stressed, and your urine pH will be acidic. So that's the power of these hormones. And until I kept having to go, I was a scientist before I went to med school in exercise physiology and human physiology, respiratory physiology as well. So pH was really, I mean, that's something that you really look at because it tells you so much. When if I was doing diving medicine and hyperbaric medicine. So is the diver able to stay in there longer, or do we need to pull them out now? Right. I mean, this is how important looking at our physiology, your pHs, especially. And I test urine pH. I'm not testing blood pH, but it's again a physiologic vital sign to tell you how you're interacting with your environment and your thoughts, your mood. And I didn't understand all this until I had to answer the questions for myself. And that's why recognizing very clearly that these are the most important hormones. And at the end of our days, we want to have an oxytocin dominant life. We want to have felt loved and we want to know that we loved well.
Yeah, I love that you're explaining all of this so in depth and I loved how you also said you could eat the same exact meal and feel completely different, right? Depending on that stress state you're in or not in. And I see that with clients, right? We can have blood sugar levels that are much higher if we're in a stress state than not, right? It's so all interconnected. And that's why I love trying to get women find one thing, right? Out of every episode that you listen to and start just applying that or just starting to be more aware of it. I think it's so powerful. Okay, so you're talking about, being alkaline, and this is something I really want you to talk about and explain, being in ketosis, but the importance for women to also be alkaline when in keto, because I love how you mentioned it, because this is something I had discovered as well, that I hadn't seen women really do great on keto. I know there are the occasional woman who can, but across the board. And so when I was reading your book and I was like, yes, this makes so much sense. So can you explain to everybody a little bit about, why women do so much better in keto when they're alkaline versus not?
Yes. Yeah. When we're talking about alkalinity too, it's that part of that measuring, adding greens into our diets and measuring urine pH so that we see that physiologic shift in our body through what we're eating and our lifestyle, right? That makes a difference. And that's why it's not a keto plan, it's a Keto-Green plan. It's the greens, the alkalinizers that we add in through herbs, spices, microgreens, dark green leafies that are so important for breast health and hormone metabolism, and our gut microbiome, our gut bacteria that are dependent on the diversity of the foods we eat to have a diverse gut microbiome. And plant foods do that. So long-term keto decreases your gut microbiome, which we know overall increases the diseases of metabolism in the long run and inflammatory diseases in the long run. So with that to say that this aspect of adding in the greens is critically important, that we're eating keto clean food as well, healthy quality fats, right? And healthy quality proteins, grass-fed, free range. We don't want any hormone disruptors that we you can avoid in our system. So that's really critically important. And then combining the greens and intermittent fasting and no more snacking so that we become insulin sensitive. And again, that marker, adding in the greens and the adaptogens to support our gut bacteria, to support our hormone balance. It's critical. Now, men do keto well longer because they have 10 times as much testosterone than women. That's an anabolic steroid, right? That builds up muscle. It builds muscle, builds bone. But women, we get into a catabolic state, acidic state, much quicker because we don't have 10 times the testosterone that men have. And you add in stress, your reproductive hormones, testosterone and DHEA are even more depleted. Add in perimenopause and menopause when your ovarian production of our hormones that we rely on mostly is even more depleted. So, those are things you have to take all that into consideration. And I learned that through my own experience. And now working with, close to 100,000 women online and in my groups. And it's pretty exciting. see
It's
that
amazing.
shift.
Yeah. I love the work you're doing. It's absolutely incredible. And I love that
Thank
you
you.
discovered this with keto because I'm someone who loves to eat high fat and I always encourage women to eat more fat. But when it comes to the keto conversation, I'm like, so this is so great to hear that you've discovered something that makes it so that it works well. It can work really well for women.
Oh,
Um,
it's so balancing. And one of the things we had an organic post in our Keto-Green community group, and someone was just like, well, how many pounds have people lost here doing this? And I was excited to read the responses. And there was a 65-year-old woman who since January lost 65 pounds. At
wow.
65, that's so huge. And there were so many other beautiful stories like that, but it goes beyond the weight loss. It's the health, it's the mental clarity, it's the improvement in the intimacy, sexual health and intimacy in our relationships. That's critically important. And one thing, your generation, you're thinking, Erica, and I'm so glad you're teaching about the healthy fats, especially in pregnancy and everything. I was in high school and college in the 80s where the low fat movement was, really pioneering the destruction of women's hormones. Really, really was. It really devastated. And I have to go through that mental brain shift for patients because we were told, oh, fat's bad. My God, fat is essential, essential.
Absolutely essential. Oh my gosh. Yes. Women don't eat enough of it. And so eat more, but good fats, ladies, good fats.
Yes, good, only good fat, only good
Only
fat.
good fats. Okay. There's so much I want to talk to you about today, but I want to make sure we talk about sexual health because my audience loves this. And
My favorite topic too.
it's your favorite. And I feel like we don't talk about it enough. So let's talk about it. And I'll just kind of let you take it away. Cause I know we kind of started a conversation with oxytocin, which leads right into sexual health and sexual function. And we talk about pelvic floor all the time over here. So
It is so critical. One of the things that I recognize through my own journey too, and as at OBGYN, I'm working with so many patients is that, at the end of the annual exam, doctor's hands on the door as you're ready to leave the room. And then the patient is feeling comfortable with you at this point is like, Dr. Ann, I have no sex drive, and I have a questionnaire and 70% of women would really write a decrease in libido. And especially when we're over age 40. And so what's happening there? So that's one of the things that I dug into. And I developed a course called Sexual CPR. And the first class is help doctor, my sex drive has no pulse, call 911, right? And I completely get that. There's a physiologic reason, but there are 7 keys to obtaining our sexy. And I'll talk about a couple of those right now. But there's so much here, right? There's so much here. But at any time we have relationship issues or we don't feel safe or we're in constant stress and that cortisol's going up and oxytocin's going down, there's going to be no sex drive there. There's going to be no sex drive there. And the other big thing that I saw in working with my patients and creating my program, Sexual CPR, is if we have postpartum pelvic pain, and I had an episiotomy a couple times. The first time, no, and I tore anteriorly along the urethra and along the clitoris. I mean, really terrible tear, and I hurt for a year. I couldn't have sex. And I will tell you, and in menopause, when you have vaginal dryness or you get urinary infections or you get a discharge and odor after every time you have sex, why the hell would you want to have sex, right? If you have pain every time you do something, why would you want to? You absolutely won't. And whether it's spoken or not, it creates a roommate situation in your household because there's mirror neurons. When we're in our most intimate relationship during sex, there's mirror neurons. And so, if you're feeling discomfort or I'm doing this for him. And if his primary reason to be intimate with you, a man's primary reason to be intimate with a woman is honestly to give her pleasure, is so that she can be turned on. Her turn on is his turn on. They get really excited by that. And you add that concept and you want to have sex because it's good for you, first of all. it brings you pleasure, and it is essential to a healthy longevity as well as a healthy long marriage. So that concept is so underappreciated, and I see it over and over again. And I've seen the shifts. And I had talked with a woman who had gone through my sexual CPR program and was using Julva, my anti-aging cream, for the vulva that I created for me and my patients, right? Because nothing exists other than Julva that works like it does. And she said she went from being they'd been married for 20 years, and they were essentially living as roommates, or even worse, brother and sister. And through using Julva, through identifying what brings her pleasure in and out of the bedroom, and speaking that, being able to communicate that, she goes, it's like we're boyfriend, girlfriend again. She goes, you're having fun, chasing each other around, going out on trips and adventures. We've scheduled a trip to Maui, she said. And I love hearing that. I love hearing that because, that's like the brink of divorce to the brink of like, oh my God, the best life has to offer. So.
Well, I love that you're talking about all of this and helping so many women, because I think so many women think like there's something wrong with us, right? If we're in that situation, it's like, well, what's wrong with me? And it's like, there really is nothing wrong with you. We have to turn inward and start to put all the pieces together and recognize like there's something you can do about it. So I really want you to talk about Julva a little bit more, because again, I have so many women who deal with some form of pelvic floor dysfunction. I have quite an array of women, age range, who listen to the podcast. So I also wanted to ask you, what do you recommend it for women who are breastfeeding? Because I know we can deal with that vaginal dryness and all that because of the hormones and things that just plummet after having a baby in order for us to breastfeed. So can you talk about a little bit of all that?
Yeah, and especially if we're breastfeeding for quite a long time, right? There's a depletion in hormones. And I really would say this is where it depends, because it depends on your age, it depends on what's happening, and the level of comfort or discomfort you're in. Now, will Julva being applied to the clitoris, to the pelvic floor vaginally, get into your breast milk? I'm not aware of that, but I wouldn't use it as a first line, right? I would do coconut oil, aloe vera gel. I like mixing coconut oil, aloe vera gel, and maybe a drop or two of rose or bergamot, and into a massage oil for the pelvic floor. And I would start with that. And then if it's really been breastfeeding for a long time and really causing problems, then I would definitely use Julva and recommend Julva, and definitely wash your hands, very good afterwards. So you're not touching the baby, because we'll transfer any cream, any lotion, anything that we touch can be transferred to the baby. So we definitely don't want to do that. So use your separate hand towel, or and make sure you wash your hands really, really well. So in those instances, yes. And then in women, definitely postpartum not breastfeeding, again, same thing, wash your hands really, really well so you're not giving. And the reason is there's DHEA. DHEA is an adrenal hormone. We're all abundant with it, and it starts to decrease in our 20s and 30s and 40s, and we have like 70%, less than 70% by the time we hit 60s that of our DHEA level that we had in our 20s. And DHEA is this reproductive hormone. It's a pro-hormone. It is broken down into estrogen and testosterone, and essential hormone, and it is depleted in times of stress. DHEA can be very much used up in times of stress. So using it judicially. And then I recommend, after age 40 that we use it preventatively. And then after age 50, I really think we all need it, because every one of us will get wrinkles on our face, right? And, we'll lose some muscle integrity as we get older. And it's happening to our pelvic floor. And that creates incontinence and pelvic floor issues, but incontinence is the number one reason caregivers put their loved one in nursing homes. And I have so many great stories. I have a woman who had, she was on the Mirena IUD, a young woman at age 26. And she had vaginal dryness, loss of moisture during orgasm, decreased orgasm, and discomfort during sex. So she started using Julva, and that just changed things completely. And also because Mirena is a progestin that interferes with your body's natural hormonal balance. That's a whole other discussion. But you really want to make sure you're on vitamins and mineral support. You doing something like my Mighty Maca greens, and possibly having to add in some bioidentical progesterone if that's continues to be an issue. And definitely using Julva. So that's helpful. And I have a 76-year-old who's in my girlfriend doctor club, and she had issues with prolapse and incontinence and getting up 4 to 5 times a night to use the bathroom. And so she started using Julva and doing pelvic floor exercises, right? The right way, Erica, the way you teach to do pelvic floor exercises. And she says she gets up 0 to 1 time a night now and doesn't have any more issues with incontinence. And the pelvic pressure she was feeling from the prolapse was completely gone. So between Julva and the pelvic floor exercises, doesn't matter your age, we see incredible improvements. And everywhere in between. I know for me, I with my first early menopause at 39, I experienced all of those symptoms. And it's no way to live, and we don't have to.
No, I love that you have created this, and there's no estrogen in there. I just wanted to make sure to say that, which I think is incredible that you were able to create something that works, and there's no estrogen in it as well.
Well, that it's safe for women who have had breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
It is safe for women who have been, been diagnosed with breast cancer and been treated with breast cancer. I feel really comfortable with that, but anyone with breast cancer should talk and clear it with their oncologist first. It has DHEA, which is a prohormone. It has plant stem cells from the alpine rose, which is this beautiful rose that blossoms in the Swiss Alps that grows amongst the harsh conditions of rocky terrain and icy, terrible weather, right? And if that doesn't define femininity, I don't know what does. Those are 2 of the key ingredients. And it's clean, no parabens, no endocrine disruptors. Yeah.
No, it's amazing. And I love that you have it. And I would recommend it. I mean, because I help teach women, right, how to get rid of their incontinence and how to help decrease symptoms of pelvic organ prolapse. And it's like, let's just add this into our toolbox and give us something else to help assist us, in this journey of life that we are all on, and so many women suffering in silence and dealing with dysfunction. And there's so many amazing things out there that we can do to help get us out of there, and also on a preventative side. So I always love the prevention side of things. So Dr. Anna, last question for you. And because I know we could keep talking for hours, but we've got to wrap up here. So is there something you haven't yet shared with everyone that you're like, this is an absolute must that I have to make sure I share with everyone before we have to hop off?
Oh my gosh. I would just say there's no limit, right? If you have hope, if you can see yourself in a certain way, or if you feel like, oh my God, I've been given all these diagnoses, I've tried this, that, and the other thing, I promise you, there is hope. You can have a healthier tomorrow than you did today. I guarantee it. I've seen amazing, I'll call them miracles, right? Transformations through empowerment and taking one next right step after the other. So that's my biggest thing is never give up on yourself, and really hold that vision of beautiful end of life, even, hold that vision really, really strong.
I love that. So Dr. Anna, will you share with everyone where they can find out more about you, reach out to you, check out your programs?
Yes, absolutely. So easy to find me at dranna.com, DRANNA.com. My books are everywhere books are sold, The Hormone Fix and Keto-Green 16. And I'd love for y'all to follow me on Instagram at The Girlfriend Doctor, which is a fun place. It's where Eric and I connected on Instagram. And, it's really a fun place to connect with people and see what I'm up to and what's going on. And I have a new book coming out in April called Menu Pause, which is going to be it's a fun way to break a plateau for sure.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait. And you have your podcast, The Girlfriend
Yes,
Doctor,
the
which
Girlfriend Doctor. I've had
yes,
you on. I'm so
yes.
excited. Great
So
episode, by the way. One of my favorite episodes.
oh, thank you. You're so sweet. So, and ladies, I will be carrying all of Dr. Anna's, her physical products, the Keto-Green and the Julva and the Maca in my shop online as well. Highly, highly recommend them to everyone. They're absolutely amazing. I love doing the Keto-Green smoothies for my lunches. I don't do them every day, but especially when I'm in a rush, right? Interviews galore and so much stuff to do. So thank you so much, Dr. Anna. It's so great to get to chat with you. And again, thank you so much for all the work that you do for women.
Thank you.